Asta would never forget what it felt like to be buried alive. She would forever hear the sound of dirt hitting the coffin as the people meant to protect her shoveled it in, knowing she was alive inside, screaming for release. She had been only 23 that night. She remained 23 still, awake long after the oxygen had run out. It was dark underground, silent, maddeningly silent. She knew, without light, that the lid above her would be scratched with broken nails, her fingers caked in blood. Yet the bleeding had stopped hours ago, her wounds closing instantly. She was alive, but to the world, she was dead. All she could do was think of the events that had put her there. It had been a quiet night in her little village, where she lived with her father and brother. Their family was known for hunting monsters. Vampires had been running rampant, leaving Asta alone more often than not. That night began with screams from the forest, and then came the fire. Fear coursed through her as she watched her father and brother prepare to leave. She begged them to stay. "Please don't leave me," she had pleaded. "Something isn't right." Her father scolded her for being selfish. She turned to her brother. "Silas, please." But he only gave her a conflicted look and turned away, as always. Asta thought of this often in her coffin, whispering the lullabies their mother had once sung. If she closed her eyes long enough, she could see her mother's face, the knitted blanket, the rocking chair. But even that memory twisted over time, turning her lullaby into a cruel song fit for a coffin. "Hush, my quiet darling. Lay your bones so still. Sleep while blood remembers. Sleep though all is dead." Her throat burned with hunger that would not kill her. There was no way to count days in the dark, only the growing hunger. She traced the scars at her neck, the reason for her punishment. That night the fire had raged and the screams grew louder. Asta ran from the flames consuming her childhood home, searching desperately for her father and brother, but finding only snow and darkness. The cold made her lungs ache as she stumbled through the forest, calling their names. "Silas! Father!" No answer. Then she saw a fur cloak, a hunter, she thought. Relief flooded her as she ran toward him. "Please! Help!" But when the man turned, she saw his inhuman features, silver eyes, a mouth drenched in blood. She tried to run, but he was faster. She remembered the weight of him and the searing pain as he ripped into her chest. Choked on her own blood, she was sure she would die cold and alone. She remembered the moonlight glinting off his silver hair and his crimson eyes full of cruel amusement. He knelt beside her as tears poured down her cheeks. "Hello, little dove," he whispered. She tried to crawl away. She knew him from stories, the cruel king who never aged. Her fingers clawed desperately at the snow, but he only laughed and leaned closer. "Shh, I'm going to make it better. Just lie still, dove." His bite didn't hurt as much as the other vampires had, maybe because she'd already lost so much blood. Then he pressed his wrist to her lips. His blood filled her mouth, and though she tried, she couldn't stop herself from swallowing. Now in the coffin, she still saw his face, his predator's smile. She screamed until her throat bled. This was all his fault. He should have let her die. Instead, she was rotting awake in this box, longing for death, for the sweet release of a final breath. She wondered if her soul would burn for eternity for a life she had not chosen, or if she might see her mother again. But she decided no. She would never see her mother again. Hollow, empty, she no longer sang or dreamed, only listened to phantom dirt falling on the coffin lid. She barely remembered the change. Only waking alone in the snow, able to stand, the red stain beneath her matching the dried blood on her nightgown. She stumbled back to the charred remains of her home and saw her family standing nearby. She moved toward them without thinking, arms reaching out for comfort. "Papa." She hadn't called him that in years. She entered the house. Her father turned, his face twisting in disgust. Silas stood behind him, shocked. She recoiled when her father drew his sword, taking guard against his own flesh and blood. Now she was nothing but a monster wearing his daughter's face. She didn't know how to defend herself and wouldn't have fought back anyway. yet he still couldn't deliver the killing blow. She could still feel the rough hands pushing her into the coffin, still see the hard faces of the hunters who helped her father bury her alive, still see the conflicted look on Silas's face. But that look meant nothing. He had never chosen her. She sobbed as the coffin was lowered, and the steady thump of dirt began. How much time had passed since then? Asta had come to terms with her fate. She lay with eyes closed as if truly dead, knowing no one was coming. Not Silas, not the cruel king who had made her this way. The silence was less suffocating now that she had given up. She let out one last shaky breath and stopped breathing at all.